Review each employee's timesheet at the end of each pay period. Account for each employee's scheduled hours per week. Approvers must review and approve time cards by 11:59 p.m. of the Monday following a pay date. Your final review of timesheets needs to occur after the end of the pay period, but prior to when the approver approves the timesheets. Most timekeepers complete their final review on the Monday morning following a pay date. You and your approver can determine by what time your review of the employee's timesheets needs to occur, but it should be completed with sufficient work time left on Monday so that the approver has time to approve the timesheets.
We'll now look at an example of a timekeeper reviewing timesheets. For training purposes, a number of different timesheet scenarios will be shown. The following example of reviewing timesheets is shown from the perspective of a timekeeper reviewing timesheets on the Monday morning following the end of a pay period. First, after logging into Kronos, click the Approver Checklist tab. The Approver Checklist displays the steps approvers need to take in order to approve their employees' Kronos timesheets. These steps include approving or rejecting each time off request and timesheet change requests. An employee's timesheet cannot be approved if an employee has any outstanding Kronos requests for the pay period or any missed punch exceptions. As you scroll down the approval checklist, if you see any time off requests, there are none listed here at the top, or timesheet change requests, and those would be located in the box second from the top, and there is one here, please remind the approver to follow the steps in their Kronos guide for approving each and every such request. However, after reminding the approver, continue with your timesheet review. Your timesheet review doesn't have to wait until the approver approves all requests. Start your review of timesheets by scrolling to the very bottom of the Approver Checklist page. Then click All Timesheets. This report will show timesheets for the previous pay period for all employees for whom you are listed as timekeeper, whose timesheets have not yet been approved, and who have total paid and unpaid hours greater than 0, excluding unpaid unscheduled days, which aren't included. To look at each employee timesheet one by one, click the box icon here on the top left, right under Page, select All on Page, and then click the View button. And here you'll be able to go through each timesheet by using the arrows. Next, click the Summary by Day tab. You'll look at the Summary by Day tab for each employee. What you're looking at here is that you're checking the weekly calc totals. So the calc total column, weekly totals, weekly total 1, weekly total number 2. Determine if each week's calc totals are less than the employee's standard hours per day multiplied by 5. In other words, the standard hours per week. For most employees, this is 40 hours per week. For building substitute teachers, it's 35 hours, and so on. The first employee we're looking at is an instructional assistant. The employee had 40 hours in the calc total area for the first week, as shown here, and 32 for the second week. We see that there's no calc total for Monday, October 7th. To look into this more, I click the Time Entry tab and scroll down to that particular day. And here I see the issue is apparently a mistaken punch interpretation. To fix this mistaken punch interpretation, I click the clock icon here, and then I click Save. And I see that the calculated total at the top of the page is now 80 hours. I scroll back also, and I see that the calc total for each week is 40 hours, and there are no longer any incomplete entries listed in the Summary by Day tab. So I click the right arrow to go to the next timesheet, and here the next employee is the timekeeper herself, Lorna Sharp. She sees that she has sufficient hours in each of the weekly calc total columns, 41:45 for the first week and 40 hours, 15 minutes for the second week. So there is no follow-up needed as far as short hours. Clicks the right arrow to go to the next timesheet. And now she's looking at the building sub, Layla Rivers. Layla has 35 hours and 15 minutes for the first week It's slightly over the 35-hour standard week for a building sub. But in the second week, there's only 28 hours. So she's short 7 hours. To look at this further, she clicks Monday, October 7th, and it takes her to that particular day that she has a question about. And here I see that there's a missed day. The next step regarding this missed day exception is to go back out of this report and see if there are any time off requests or timesheet change requests that, when approved, would clear that exception. And here I see that there, in fact, is a timesheet change request by Layla for 10/7 for a start time of 8 o'clock, an end time of 3:30 for a total of 7 hours when taking out the lunch. So this entry, when approved, will bring her up to her required amount of hours. So now I go back to the report by scrolling all the way down, clicking all timesheets again, clicking the checkbox, selecting all on page, clicking view. And now I use the right arrow to go to the next employee, Jenny Ramsharan. I click the summary by day tab, and here I see that for the first week, there's a calc total of 40 hours and 45 minutes. So there's no shortage there. But I scroll down and I see that on Tuesday, October 8th, there is no calc total. And so there's only 32 hours for that week. I click that particular day, Tuesday, October 8th, to get a better look at it. And here I see that there's a missed punch exception. Next thing I want to do is check to see if the employee has submitted a missed punch request. So I go back out to the approval checklist and I scroll down and I verify once again that there is no missed punch request from this employee. I checked my records, and this is an employee I followed up several times with to submit a missed punch request, but they haven't yet done so. Because there's nothing more I can do in regards to that timesheet, I simply note that I'll inform the principal of my follow-up efforts with the employee and let them know that the timesheet cannot be approved unless or until the employee submits the request. So I scroll back down to the bottom of the report. I click all timesheets, click the all on page again, click view, and I go to the next on the list, which is Ashton Cowan. Now, Ashton is a 4-hour-a-day instructional assistant, so his standard hours per week is 20 hours. I note that for the first week, the employee only has 19 hours, so they're 1 hour short. On the second week, they have 20 hours and 15 minutes, so there is no shortage for the second week. To look at the shortage on the first week, I click one of the entries, and here I see that there is a sick leave absence for 3 hours and 30 minutes for both of those days. If I click the comment, I see that those came over from Red Rover. What I do in this situation is I check Red Rover to see what the employee requested. When I check Red Rover, I see that they, in fact, requested the whole day, which for them is 4 hours, but that it came into Kronos with only 3 hours and 30 minutes. So in this case, since the amount was correctly recorded in Red Rover and it came over differently into Kronos, I simply change the amount in Kronos to match Red Rover. So 4 hours for each of those days. And because the reference to Red Rover is already in the comment field, I don't even need to update that because it matches Red Rover. I just go up and click save to save the changes. And now the employee has their correct amount of hours listed for personal illness for each day. Now, the reason why a lesser amount of hours sometimes comes over for 4-hour-a-day employees is sometimes because they have a lunch listed in Kronos. So I click the employee's name, and then I scroll down. And here I see that there's a default lunch break of 30 minutes. Well, since they're a 4-hour-a-day employee, they don't take a lunch break. So I can change that from 30 to 0, click save. And now their schedule in Kronos will be updated, and that will affect how their absence is brought in from Red Rover. So future absences for a full day will be brought in with the correct amount of hours, 4 hours for each day. So we'll look at the final employee by clicking the right arrow and click the Summary by Day tab. And this employee is a 40-hour-a-week instructional assistant. So for the first week, there's only 38 hours and 15 minutes, so a short 1 hour and 45 minutes. And the second week, it's the full amount, 40 hours. So there's not an issue there. So to look at this issue a little further, I see that the shortage is on a particular day, Wednesday, October 2nd. I click that day, and here I see that there's a late punch in of 9:30, and that's why there was less time for that day. I've already verified that there are no requests in the time off area or in the timesheet change requests area other than Layla Rivers. And in this scenario, I check Red Rover to see if there's possibly an absence that didn't come over for this employee. There was no absence entry for the employee in Red Rover for that day. So I communicate with the approver about this, and the approver emails back that the employee was unexcused late that day and to use AWOL. So to make that entry, I click the plus arrow. I enter 1.75 or 1:45. Under time off, click the down arrow and then click browse and select AWOL. And then I click save. And very importantly, to show backup documentation for why I used AWOL, I save the principal's email noting the approval to use AWOL, and then I click this paperclip icon for supporting documents. Click choose. I select the saved AWOL note from the principal. Then I click upload, and then I click close. And now there's supporting documentation for why I entered AWOL for that particular day. And then I click save and click the UKG logo to go back to the approver checklist. And I scroll all the way down. And at this point, I've concluded my review of the employee timesheets. I let the principal or approver know of the remaining issues, and I've completed my work for the pay period. So that's an example of how to do a timesheet review shortly after the end of a pay period in advance of the principal or approver approving the Kronos timesheets.